LBR LBO Infrastructure Summit 2016.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a true honor to stand in front of so many experts and professionals in the infrastructure development sector. And it's my first time in Sri Lanka, so thank you for welcoming me. Well, I'm here today to share with you some insights on the challenges revolving around infrastructure projects and how we, as Allianz, as a global insurer, will try to manage the risks together with the clients. And so today, after hearing so much about the megapolis and also the port city and the projects that will be rolled out, I want to share with you 3 discussion points. So we'll take a look at risk management through an insurer's perspective. We'll look at Sri Lanka through the eyes of a risk manager. And we'll take a look at Allianz and what we can offer to Sri Lanka. So, as you all know, in infrastructure, when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about several aspects. And the speakers from this morning have been talking about transportation, about housing. So we look at several aspects of these. So as a risk manager, we look at specific risks and how things can go wrong in these projects. And so in transportation, we can associate with tunnel collapse or bridge collapse. When we talk about power and energy sector, we can look at flooding and explosion risks. And when we're building housing, we can definitely look at, in terms of high-rise buildings, we can look at water damage and also fire damage. And depending on the severity of these risks and also the mitigation measures in place, the degree of loss varies. And so let me share with you some case studies on losses that has happened in the past. This is a case study about in China in 2003. And this is a project in Shanghai where they were expanding the metro line number 4, and a bit of the tunnel had to cross underneath the Huangpu River. The tunnels were 2 parallel tunnel tubes constructed by a tunnel boring machine. And what happened was that because these tunnels were built in parallel, there were needs of cross-passage tunnels. And the failure occurred during the construction of these cross-passage tunnels. There was a massive ingress of water and soil collapse at a depth of around 35 meters below ground, causing several meters of ground settlement. And the cause of this failure was that they used a ground freezing unit, which its purpose was to stabilize the ground above the tunnel and also to stabilize the riverbed. But when this ground freezing unit failed, it caused the instability above the tunnel. And as you can see from the picture, this caused the collapse of high-rise office buildings, and also some flood protection structures were badly damaged. I'll go into another case study, which took place in Singapore, closer to Sri Lanka this time. This is a mass rapid transit project. This tunnel was built using open-cut tunnel excavation. The tunnel was 15 meters wide, 33 meters deep, and they had an earth lateral support system in place, consisting of diaphragm walls and steel strutting. And what happened was, when the 9th level of strut was being installed, the collapse happened. And from the investigation reports, there were unusual cracking noises which were heard early in the morning till the collapse. And this is actually a sign of something that was going to go terribly wrong. The collapse area was about 130 meters by 100 meters, causing settlement of up to 15 meters. And the cause was because the earth lateral support system was under-designed. There was no proper design reviews, and also poor workmanship and construction on site, leading to this collapse. And I'll show you the picture first. This is actually a picture of the tunnel construction just next to the Nikko Highway, which is Singapore's major east-west highway. And because of this collapse, several workers were killed and injured, and also 15,000 people were affected, and 700 businesses were affected as well. And so this gives you a taste of how infrastructure project failure can not just affect the project itself, but it has third-party consequences. So from these case studies, what can we learn? Well, we know that there is a definite need for robust design, risk management, design review, and independent checking. Second, there's a need for purposeful back analysis, effective instrumentation and monitoring, and also the ability to interpret these instrumentation and monitoring data. Third, there's a need of an effective system of management of uncertainties and quality during construction, or what we usually refer to as the management of change, and also corporate competencies and safety management. And last but not least, the safety of temporary works is just as important as the design of permanent works. And these temporary works and permanent works both together should be designed according to established codes and should be checked accordingly. So how do we view Sri Lanka through the eyes of a risk manager in terms of risk perspective, from a risk perspective? In the figures, I'll show the figures first. In the figures here, I've attached 2 samples of risk assessment reports about natural catastrophe. The one on the left shows 2 bars, which are highlighting the highest risks, which are river flooding and seismic hazard. And the one on the right actually shows that Sri Lanka is actually quite okay. It's quite okay for risk rating in terms of natural catastrophe. And of course, different reports show different things because the topic of risk is quite subjective. But what we can see is that although these ratings are not bad for Sri Lanka, I think all of us in this room can remember that in 2004, there was a big tsunami which hit Sri Lanka, and nobody saw that coming. And also from my colleagues in the Sri Lanka office, they told me that several months ago there was heavy rainfall which caused big floods in Sri Lanka, and these were the biggest floods in the last 20 to 30 years. So the point I want to make is that for the infrastructure that we've been hearing about and they've been planned in a pipeline, we have to be very vigilant in managing these risks, and depending on the design and the codes and standards that are implemented for these projects, we have to be careful, and we have to look at how these design codes and standards are used and implemented, and they can play a major factor in how the infrastructure can withstand the risk exposure. So let's look at what Allianz can offer to Sri Lanka. We are one of the few specialist corporate insurers with a genuine global market presence, which we try to provide a one carrier insurance solution across the whole spectrum of corporate and specialty risks. And actually, in Mr. Liang's presentation yesterday about Port City, he did also mention that China Harbour is undertaking one of the projects in the Hong Kong Third Runway project, which is actually a 630-hectare reclamation project in Hong Kong. And to date, it is one of the biggest, or actually it is the biggest project in Hong Kong. And Allianz is the lead insurer for this project for the 8 to 10 years of the project duration. So I know 630 hectares, comparing to Port City, which is around 200-something hectares. I'm not trying to dwarf what Port City is, but it just gives you a perspective, a view of the infrastructure projects that Allianz has the capability of insuring. So as for me, I'm a risk consultant in Allianz, and I'm part of a global group which has around 300 risk consultants. And we can perform and provide risk management services for construction and civil engineering projects, machinery construction projects, operational power plants, machinery, processes, health and safety management, and also marine logistics and transportation. And with our global group, which is in 29 key countries, and actually we're in 160 countries if you count our network partners, we can help our clients build a global network and enter the globalized market, and which from Dr. De Silva's presentation yesterday, he mentioned that it's important to be competitive, to be globalized, and to be open. And Allianz has the tools, has all these tools to help the client achieve that. We believe that only by understanding each client's individual requirements that we can help manage and reduce the risks by working together and building a partnership and a long-term relationship with the client. At Allianz, we strongly believe that corporate insurance is not just a commodity, but it requires tailor-made solutions and understanding of each other to make it work. There is an old saying that prevention is better than the cure, and in reality, in Allianz, we recommend a two-sided approach to risk management. First is prevention, which is through the risk management and advance of the loss to reduce the damage, and also through the cure, which is actually insurance as a risk transfer mechanism. And this is why Allianz, we can support these companies to better understand the risks so that they know what they're getting into and the exposures that they're facing. And we can help the clients to develop a very comprehensive risk management approach. So with that, I thank you, and we look forward to the panel discussion later. Thank you.
LBR LBO Infrastructure Summit 2016.